The silence in the room was suffocating. The sound of the wall clock ticked like a hammer in her mind. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Claire stared blankly at a random spot on the wall, trying to hold on to something, anything, that still made sense. But nothing did. Nothing made sense anymore. The doctor across from her shuffled some papers. He avoided eye contact. It was as if he already knew that once their eyes met, the truth would become unbearable. Then he took a deep breath, leaned forward, and delivered the sentence with the trained coldness of someone who's had to do this far too often. Claire, the test confirmed what we feared. The tumor is malignant, and it's stage 4. Silence. She heard it. She understood it. But something inside her refused to accept it. Stage 4, she whispered, as if the words were foreign in her mouth. The doctor nodded slightly. There was compassion in his eyes, but also a professional detachment. He continued, "Unfortunately, it has spread. Treatment options are limited. We can try to prolong time, offer comfort, but..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The end was embedded in the pause, in the tone, in the heaviness of the air. Claire's hands tingled. The ground beneath her felt like it had vanished. Everything turned gray for a moment, as if life had suddenly pressed pause. She was 27. She loved old jazz records, tragic love stories, and walking barefoot around her apartment. She worked as a librarian at a public school in Queens and had a list of countries she wanted to visit before turning 30. First on the list was Ireland. Now, all of that seemed pointless, distant. "How long?" she asked, trying to sound composed, but her voice barely came out. "It's hard to say. Maybe a few months, maybe less. Every case is different." Claire nodded. She thanked him, shook his hand like someone politely ending a dull conversation, and left. The hallway felt longer than usual. The walls blurred at the edges. People were talking on phones, holding papers, laughing. Life went on. Only hers had stopped. Outside, the air was cold. A sharp wind sliced through the avenue. Claire descended the clinic steps with no real destination in mind. She walked, one step after another, like a machine set on autopilot. The sky was partly cloudy. The sun peeked out from behind the clouds like it was asking for permission. She kept going until she reached Central Park, the only place where she still felt like she could breathe. She entered from the east side, passing through the iron gates. The grass was slightly damp, and the smell of wet earth brought back a childhood memory, running barefoot in her grandmother's garden in North Carolina. She found a bench near a small lake, sat down, took a deep breath, looked up at the sky. "Now what?" she whispered to herself. There, among the distant chirping of birds and the soft rustling of leaves dancing in the wind, Claire finally felt the full weight of the sentence. The tears came uninvited, quiet. It wasn't panic. It was a mix of grief and clarity. She didn't want to die, not yet. She hadn't truly loved yet. She hadn't left her mark on the world. She hadn't written the book she'd dreamed about since college. But here she was, alone, in the middle of the most alive city in the world, with an invisible clock ticking down the last chapters of her life. And it was there, on that very bench, that something new was about to begin. Something that would change everything. She just didn't know it yet. The bench was dark wood, worn down by time, with small splinters poking out along its edges. Claire ran her fingers along one of those rough spots, as if that broken detail mirrored her own state. Damaged, but still whole. The lake in front of her was calm. A few ducks glided across the water with an almost irritating serenity. The world around her seemed untouched by pain. Children ran laughing. A couple had a picnic under a nearby tree, and an old man read a book with narrowed eyes and full concentration. Claire closed her eyes for a moment. She took a deep breath, as if oxygen alone could reorganize the chaos inside her. It was strange. Despite the gravity of the diagnosis, she didn't exactly feel fear. It was more like a void, a vast existential vacuum. When she opened her eyes, she realized she was no longer alone on the bench. A young man had quietly taken a seat on the opposite end. He had messy brown hair, wore a worn leather jacket, and held a sketchbook on his lap. He didn't seem to notice her, completely absorbed in his own world, sketching with a stubby pencil. Claire watched him discreetly for a few seconds. He looked to be in his early 30s, with striking features and a focused, almost melancholic expression. An artist, maybe? That's when he turned and noticed her gaze. He smiled faintly, a small, respectful smile. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Claire hesitated. She didn't know if she wanted to talk, didn't know if she could. But something about his presence didn't scare her. It was as if he too was trying to escape something. "I don't know," she said after a long pause. "Today's just not a good day." He nodded with understanding. Carefully, he closed his sketchbook and set it beside him. "I get that. I have days like that too." He glanced at the lake, then back at her. "Sometimes I come here just to breathe." Claire let out a tiny laugh, barely audible. "Breathe. Yeah, that sounds simple, but it's been hard lately." The man extended his hand. "Noah." She shook it gently. "Claire." Another silence followed. But this one wasn't awkward. It felt like a shared pause between two thoughts, a collective breath between two souls. "Can I show you something?" he asked, picking up the sketchbook again. Claire nodded, intrigued. Noah flipped it open and showed her a graphite drawing, a woman sitting on a bench, gazing out at the horizon. The lines were soft, almost ethereal. The image seemed to capture a feeling more than a scene. "I just drew this," he said, "before I even noticed you. And now," he looked at her, eyes full of mild wonder. "It kind of looks like you." Claire said nothing. A shiver ran down her spine. Was it a coincidence? A sign? Or just one of those strange things the universe tosses our way? "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. "Are you an artist?" "I try to be. I do illustrations, paintings, and survive by selling portraits at street fairs." She smiled, this time a bit more genuinely. "So, you watch people?" "Always. Art begins where hurry ends." Claire didn't respond, but those words stayed with her. She didn't know who Noah was. He didn't know what she was hiding. But for a few minutes, on that weathered bench, two lives collided in the middle of chaos. And something, still invisible, began to grow right there. Claire didn't know what kept pulling her back to that bench. Maybe it was the lightness of the park air, the way sunlight danced through the leaves, or simply the fact that there, for a few minutes, she could forget. But the truth was, in the following days, she returned. And Noah was there. Always with his sketchbook on his lap, pencil in hand, eyes keenly observing the world, as if trying to decode emotions through shadows and lines. By the third day, he greeted her naturally. By the fifth, he brought 2 coffees and handed her one like it was part of a long-standing routine. By the 7th, they were laughing together effortlessly, like old friends. Claire asked herself with every encounter how it was possible to feel so alive beside someone when inside she felt broken. Noah was different. He didn't ask invasive questions. He didn't push her to explain anything. He just existed beside her. And somehow that was exactly what she needed. "Do you always come here?" he asked one morning, as they watched a squirrel climb a tree branch with a stolen apple. "Not before," she replied. "But lately, it's been my escape spot." "Escape from what?" Claire hesitated. She looked down at her shoes, then back at him. "Life, maybe." He smiled, not with amusement, but with sadness. The kind of smile that comes from someone who understands more than they say. "Sometimes I escape from life too." She looked at him, trying to see inside. "Why?" Noah sighed. "My sister died 2 years ago. Leukemia. She was 24. Claire felt a chill in her stomach. For a moment, she wanted to get up and walk away. But she stayed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Thanks," he replied. "She taught me a lot, even how to draw with my heart." Silence returned. But now it carried weight. Claire said nothing, but something shifted inside her. It was as if the universe was testing her courage. Right there sat someone who understood what loss felt like, who knew the pain of watching someone leave too soon. But she still couldn't tell him, not yet. "Have you ever thought of publishing your drawings?" she asked, trying to shift the focus. Noah shrugged. "I have, but I'm not sure the world is ready for what I feel." Claire smiled. "I think the world needs exactly that. To feel." Noah looked at her for a moment, as if her words had touched a place inside him long buried. "You talk like someone who's felt a lot." She looked away. "Maybe." That conversation, simple and deep, connected them in a new way. It was no longer just coincidence. It wasn't just comfort anymore. Claire felt fear. Fear of getting attached. Fear of hurting someone. But more than anything, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. a desire to come back the next day. That Saturday morning, Claire woke up before her alarm. For the first time in weeks, she felt something different in her chest. It wasn't joy exactly, but it was light, almost hope. She received a message from Noah shortly after 9. "Do you like real coffee? I have a place I want to show you." Claire hesitated. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long minute. She looked healthy. Her face still had color, but there was something in her eyes, a kind of tiredness no makeup could hide. Still, she replied, "Only if there's jazz playing in the background." 40 minutes later, they met outside a small cafe with red brick walls and an old wooden sign that read, "Augustine's." The place looked like it had been pulled straight from a movie. Low lighting, the scent of fresh coffee, walls covered in old books and vinyl records hung like paintings. "You had me at jazz," Noah joked as she took off her coat. "And you had me at the smell," Claire replied, smiling. They sat at a table by the window. Billie Holiday played softly in the background. Claire closed her eyes for a second and took a deep breath. She wanted to remember that moment. "How did you find this place?" she asked. "My sister. She used to love it here. We'd spend hours making up stories about the customers." He smiled, his eyes lost in the memory. "I still do that sometimes." Claire watched him in silence. The way he spoke about his sister, with such tenderness and pain at once, touched her in a way she couldn't quite explain. It was as if he was letting her see pieces of his heart, slowly, unguarded. "Okay then," she said, leaning forward with a playful glint in her eye. "That woman in the purple hat over there in the corner. What's her story?" Noah glanced over, thought for a few seconds, then answered with theatrical seriousness. "Widowed 22 years ago. She comes here every Saturday, sits at that same table, and writes letters to her late husband. But she never sends them. She keeps them all in a wooden box in her bedroom, along with their wedding rings." Claire smiled, visibly moved. "I'd pay to read those letters. I'd pay just to see her face while writing them." The waiter brought 2 cappuccinos with foam shaped like leaves. Claire took a sip and looked outside. Out there, the city was alive. In here, time seemed suspended. "Have you ever thought of leaving this place?" she asked suddenly. "New York?" She nodded. Noah paused for a moment. "I have. But I think I'm afraid I won't find anywhere else what I still haven't found here." Claire didn't answer. That sentence echoed in her mind. She knew what she was looking for, or at least she thought she did. She was searching for something to make the time she had left matter. And maybe she had started to find it there at that table, in that hidden cafe, with that man who made her forget, even just for a moment, the constant shadow of death. But how could she tell him? How do you break something that's only just beginning? Autumn seemed more beautiful that year. Maybe it was just Claire's impression, but the leaves looked brighter, the breeze felt gentler, and the sky, bluer. Or maybe it was Noah. The days passed like pages of a book you read slowly, not wanting it to end. Park strolls, impromptu coffees, conversations ranging from childhood memories to secret dreams. Noah listened attentively. He laughed with her. He touched her hand gently, as if he understood the value of silence between words. Claire found herself smiling for no reason, laughing openly, feeling time slow down in his presence. And that, somehow, broke her, because every laugh was a future memory for him, and every touch, a silent goodbye for her. "You seem different," Noah said one afternoon as they walked among the fallen leaves in Central Park. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you've started breathing again." Claire smiled sadly. "Maybe I'm just learning to appreciate the now." Noah stopped walking. He looked at her with that gaze that seemed to see right through her. "That's beautiful. But it also feels like there's something you're not telling me." She looked away. Her heart raced. The urge to tell him nearly escaped through her eyes. "Some things are just hard to say out loud," she replied. He nodded, didn't push, and that touched her even more. In the following days, he took her to a modern art museum. Claire wandered through the exhibits like someone rediscovering the world. She lightly touched a sculpture and said, "This makes me feel alive." Noah looked at her with admiration. "You are alive, intensely." She bit her lip, trying to hold back her emotions. She was in love, with someone who didn't deserve to suffer. Another day, he took her to watch the sunset from a hidden rooftop in Brooklyn. The sky was painted in shades of orange and violet, and Claire held his hand tighter than usual. "What are you most afraid of?" she asked, eyes fixed on the horizon. Noah thought for a moment. "Forgetting the people I love after they're gone." She felt a knot in her throat. The same fear lived in her, but reversed. She feared being forgotten by someone who didn't yet know she would leave. That night, she wrote a letter to him. A long letter, filled with details, confessions, truths. She told everything: her diagnosis, her fears, her pain, but also what he had given her: color, breath, meaning. She placed the letter in a drawer. She couldn't give it to him. Not yet. For now. She just wanted one more day. Claire's apartment was soaked in silence. It was nighttime, and the soft yellow light from the lamp cast gentle shadows across the walls. The city pulsed outside, but inside, time felt frozen. She sat at the kitchen table with a mug of nearly cold tea and a heart beating far too loudly. She picked up a thick sheet of paper, the kind she used to write poems on as a teenager. Beside it, a fountain pen. She took a deep breath and began. "Noah, I wish I could start by saying I'm sorry. But I don't even know if I have the right to say that because you don't yet know what I'm sorry for. Maybe once you do, you won't even want to keep reading. But please, if you can, stay. Just a little longer." The words poured out in waves, sometimes calm, sometimes crashing. Claire wrote as if each line were a confession, as if that paper were her final stage, her only relief. She told him everything, from the diagnosis to the afternoon they met. She described how she'd felt dead inside before he came into her life, and how, little by little, he had reignited her will to live, even if just for a short while. "You gave me the most beautiful illusion of my life, that there was still time. And maybe it was just an illusion, but it was the one that made me feel truly alive." She stopped several times to wipe away tears. She felt like she was spilling not just the truth, but a love still in bloom. A love growing quietly, between coffees and deep talks about life. "I know it's unfair. Unfair to let you get close without knowing. Unfair to smile at you while I'm fading. But I needed this. I needed to feel that before everything ends, I was loved. And even more, that I loved." When she finished, folding the paper carefully, Claire felt as though she had lifted a weight off her chest. But she also knew she wasn't ready. Not yet. She placed the letter in a wooden box on the highest shelf of her bookcase. The same shelf where she kept memories too painful to see every day. She spent the rest of the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Noah had texted her hours earlier. "Today was one of the best days I've ever had. Thank you for existing." Claire didn't respond. She simply held the phone to her chest, closed her eyes, and wished with everything she had that she had more time. But for now, she still had tomorrow. And for her, that was everything. The day began with a clear sky and promises in the air. Claire woke up with a strange heaviness in her chest. It wasn't pain. It was more like a deep exhaustion that came not from her body but from her soul. Still, she got dressed, put on a light blue dress and tied a scarf in her hair. Noah had promised to take her somewhere special that Sunday. "You're going to love it," he said excitedly as they drove. "It's kind of hidden, but it has a stunning view of the city." The place was an overlook atop an old building in the Lower East Side. It felt like all of New York stretched out before them. Claire smiled as she took in the view. Buildings, bridges, rivers, and the golden mid-morning light touching everything gently. "Wow," she whispered. "Do you always find these magical places?" "I look for them like someone searching for safe havens," Noah replied proudly. "And now, I want to share them with you." Claire held his hand. They stood side by side, the wind gently tossing their hair. She wished that moment could last forever. But her body had other plans. The world began to spin slowly, like someone had turned life into slow motion. Sound became distant, muffled. She tried to speak, but no words came out. And then, everything went dark. Claire collapsed. Noah caught her just in time to keep her from hitting her head. He shouted for help, heart pounding as if it would burst. He had never seen her like that, never imagined something could snatch her from that lightness so fast. She was rushed to the nearest hospital. While doctors hurried, Noah sat in the waiting room with trembling hands and eyes locked on the door. Time seemed frozen. When a doctor finally came out, the expression on his face wasn't one of relief. She's stable now, but we need to talk about her medical history. Are you family? I'm a friend. Close. Noah's voice cracked. Then she needs to authorize you to hear the details. But given the severity, maybe she should have told you already. Those words hit him like a blade. Claire woke hours later, pale, her eyes drifting around the room. Noah was there, sitting, waiting. She tried to smile. He didn't return it. "What's going on, Claire?" She didn't answer. She simply turned her face away. "You're really going to leave me like this? After everything?" The silence was deafening. Noah stood up, ran his hands through his hair, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he looked at her one last time. "I trusted you with my past, Claire. All of it. And now, I don't even know who you are." The door closed, and the room filled with absence. Claire cried. For the first time, she cried with her whole body, not just from pain, but from fear. Fear that she had just lost something she barely had time to live. The days that followed were made of silence. Claire didn't hear from Noah. No messages, no calls. The blank screen of her phone became a constant reminder of the distance now between them. She understood. He felt betrayed. And in some way, so did she. Not by him, but by herself. She had the chance to tell him, to trust him, but she postponed it. Out of fear, out of cowardice, out of love. Noah, meanwhile, wandered through streets that no longer felt the same. The city, once vibrant, now sounded muffled. He remembered every laugh of hers, every stray comment, how she always looked away whenever he spoke about the future. Now, everything made sense, and it tore him apart. On the morning of the fourth day, Claire made her decision. She picked up the letter, the one she had written days ago. She folded it carefully, slipped it into an envelope, and left her apartment. She knew where to find him. He had told her once that when he needed to think, he went to the East River Pier near the Manhattan Bridge. It was where his sister used to sketch. She found him there, sitting alone, staring at the river like he was searching for answers in the current. He looked thinner, hollow-eyed. "Noah." He turned slowly. When he saw her, his body tensed, but he said nothing. Claire walked toward him with hesitant steps. She held out the envelope. "I should have told you sooner. I should have trusted you, but I was scared. Of losing this. Of losing you." He looked at the letter but didn't take it right away. "And now? Now that you've already lost me?" The question cut deep. Claire took a breath, holding back tears. "I have cancer. Terminal. Stage 4, she said directly. Noah froze. The wind from the river swept between them like a cold whisper. "How long have you known?" "Before I met you. The day we met in the park. I had just left the doctor's office." He ran his hands over his face, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because, for the first time in a long while, I felt alive. And I wanted to protect that. I wanted to live something that wasn't tainted by death." Silence. Claire sat beside him, not touching. "You don't owe me anything, but I owed you this. The truth, and what I feel." She set the letter next to him and stood up. "I understand if you never want to see me again, but truly thank you for giving me back parts of myself I thought I had lost." Claire turned, ready to leave. But before she took her second step, she felt Noah's hand catch hers. She looked back. His eyes were filled with tears. "You haven't lost me, Claire. You don't lose someone you truly love. You just get less time." He held the letter to his chest, and in that moment she knew, even if there was no forever, there was now. And now was all they needed. They didn't talk about the future. They didn't make distant plans. They didn't exchange impossible promises. After the truth came out, Claire and Noah began to live as if each day were the only one. And maybe that's why everything became more real. That week, Noah showed up at Claire's apartment door with a backpack and a soft smile. "I've got 2 tickets to that art festival in Beacon. Want to go on an adventure?" She hesitated for less than 2 seconds. "I'm in." The train ride was quiet at first, with fingers entwined and glances that said more than words. Noah sketched in his notebook. Claire rested her head on his shoulder, watching the landscape as if she wanted to memorize every tree, every bend in the river, every ray of sunlight. The festival was outdoors, with installations scattered around an old brick factory by the Hudson. Claire walked slowly, Not because of weakness, but because she wanted to absorb everything. The art, the breeze, the sound of water, Noah's presence. In an empty room, with a sculpture made of light and glass, she said, "If I had to choose one moment to keep forever, it would be this." Noah looked at her and replied in a whisper, "I'd keep all of you." In the following days, they visited small museums, hidden cafes, watched old films in a neighborhood theater, danced to jazz in a tiny Harlem bar. Claire, even tired, laughed like never before. There was a glow in her eyes, even with the constant shadow behind them. They created rituals. They sketched together in the park, left hidden notes around the house. Claire started recording short audio messages for Noah, little reflections about what she felt, remembered, or didn't want to forget. "If I'm not here someday, I want you to listen to me," she said while recording one of them. "Because not even death can erase some voices." Noah listened, deeply moved, but didn't cry, not in front of her. He had made a decision. As long as there was a now, there would be life. And that's what they promised each other. Not a future, but a full present. One afternoon, Claire wrote in pencil on the wall of an alley they used to walk through. "Time doesn't belong to us, but the love that fits inside it does." She smiled as Noah snapped a picture of the phrase. That night, lying together on the couch, she said, "I'm scared. But not of the end. I'm scared this will all vanish like it never happened." Noah squeezed her hand. "This won't vanish, Claire. It's carved into me, into every place we've been, into everything you've touched." She closed her eyes, and for a moment, she felt she no longer had to fight time. She was beating it, minute by minute. Spring arrived gently. The trees in Central Park bloomed in shades of pink and white. The air carried that sweet, damp scent only new beginnings know how to bring. Claire watched the changing season through her bedroom window. Her body was weaker, her breath shorter, but her eyes still full of light. Noah was with her every day, reading books aloud, bringing her favorite meals, sketching beside her. Sometimes they said nothing at all, and still, everything was understood. "Promise me something," Claire asked one morning, her voice barely a whisper. "Anything. Take me to that bench, our bench, just one more time." Noah hesitated. He wanted to protect her. But he also knew Claire wasn't asking out of whim. She was asking because she knew it was the last time. On the clearest afternoon of that spring, he took her there, carefully, one step at a time. Claire wore a yellow coat and a scarf in her hair. As always, she looked light, despite the weight of time. They sat on the bench, the same one where it had all begun. She looked around, took a deep breath, and smiled. It was here, where everything changed, where I really started to live. "So did I," Noah said, gently holding her hand. They sat in silence for long minutes, watching the leaves dance in the breeze. Claire rested her head on his shoulder. "If I have to go, I want to go from here, from this place." Noah didn't answer with words. He just nodded, eyes brimming. There, on the bench where love was born, Claire fell asleep. And as the sun slowly dipped behind the blooming branches, her chest grew still. No pain, no fear, just peace. Noah stayed there for hours, holding her hand. Later, he left his sketchbook beside her. In it was the story of them. The first drawing, the coffee, the overlook, the letters, the laughter, the silences, and one last blank page. At the top he wrote, "For everything that still lives in me." He picked a flower from the ground, placed it on the page, and stood. Before leaving, he looked one last time at the pink-streaked sky and smiled through tears. Claire was gone, but her love would remain there, in the spring, on the bench, in everything he still was.